Okay, welcome everybody to the Commissioners meeting of the Gas and Light Board. I'll remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded. Let's see, so the first order of business is Commissioners' reports. And I just wanted to bring something up. I should have warned you that I was going to bring it up, but I just want to have a quick update on what the policy is regarding when people apply for jobs in the department, because it came to my attention that somebody had applied for a position and several weeks went by and the position was filled, but the person never received anything acknowledging that the application had been submitted. And so I just wanted to talk about what do you typically try to do? Maybe that was an anomaly. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we dropped the ball on it. We have the new office manager. We probably didn't close the loop on process for that one. So we're trying to modify make sure she knows if we have to do it again, that she's more proactive in all the communication.
Okay, so are you saying that typically you would?
Typically, we should notify them that they at least, we've done a preliminary screen and thank you for your application, or if we've done the next step, say, we've done preliminary interviews and we've found another candidate. So some form of a communication we should have had. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know how others feel. I know that when I apply for jobs, I typically don't get a communication back saying, we know you've applied, stay tuned. I don't hear that one. I just hear, either I hear that they want to contact me and have a meeting, or I hear that they filled a position.
Yeah.
One or the other. So as long as there's at least one communication going back out to the applicant, and it's critical, especially because, most of the people who are applying, I'm assuming, are from Wakefield. I think that's probably typical. Is that more or less?
Probably 80-20 or 70-30.
Yeah.
A higher percentage, obviously. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I had on that. Any other commissioners' reports?
No one else. Just wanted to take the opportunity to thank the department and the staff for their exceptional work in response to the multiple outages due to pole strikes that have happened in the past couple of weeks. Several people actually reached out to me directly to commend the department and the staff for their exemplary work and response times. And these incidents highlight the exceptional management and staff here at Gas and Light, reflecting their professionalism, outstanding training, and substantial investments made in the modernization of our grid. So just wanted to say thank you and pass those on.
Thank you. Yeah, that incident on Thursday night
on the 30th. Yeah,
that was the big and with the technology that we have now, I mean, there was a pole and a wire on a car that needed to be killed right away, and Ed was able to do it on a call from the police from his house within 2 minutes.
It's impressive.
And so and then we had the outage restored. We had a whole circuit out. We had the outage restored in just over an hour. So it was
not only that, I think the callback from, I told you because I was going back with text messages with people, the callback on like 15 minutes after I place the call that there's an outage. It goes a long way.
Yeah. We can't always do that in every case, but
there's somebody on the phone. Okay.
So a question. So you place the call?
Or called the
or somebody, a
number.
customer, somebody placed the call.
Number to report an outage.
Would we have known
oh yeah.
if somebody?
A, we got a fire call. B, we have technology that tells us when a meter's out now. So
Okay.
but in this case, the first indication was that we got a police and fire call immediately. So
Okay. So absent that, we would have.
we still would have known, because our outage management system, when a meter goes out. Actually, on this case with the pole, we wouldn't have known until we had to take the circuit out. So in this case, it would have been a police and fire call.
Okay.
Yeah, we wouldn't have had any other way to know until that first call, and then we had to take the circuit out.
There was no outage at the time.
There was no outage caused by the pole strike.
No outage caused by the pole. Okay.
I see.
Got it.
My street was impacted.
Yeah.
I didn't see it flip, so that's why there were no outage reports.
I did call but didn't get through, and then the outage map came up within a minute. It was like 1,000 plus.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's it. Something happened.
That's a public outage map?
Yeah, it's on our
Really
webpage.
helpful.
It's if you go to the front of the page on the right side, there's a link called outages. I think it updates every 60 seconds. There's a counter on it.
And that was the Nahan Street accident, right?
Yeah, that was one. We had
Hold up.
2 pole strikes in the hunt and 1 at the Rotary over the weekend, 3 in 1 weekend.
I'll mention that.
People to the
One in
outage.
the hunt,
The
yeah.
next night, there was another.
What?
I was pointing people to the outage maps.
Okay.
Which is really helpful. And
Yeah.
I think hopefully it reduces all the calls into the department too, you know.
The biggest win is when we can record an upfront message on the call screen that says, we're aware of an outage on Nahat Street in the local area. And so when we're able to record that call, we drop the call. We get, our abandon rate goes up to like 90% when we get, which is what you want. You want somebody to call in, hear the message, and then abandon the call because they got what they wanted. That's the goal. So when we have time to record that message, that's the ultimate goal of that, is to get a call that comes in, hears what they want and abandons.
Ooh, at the DPU, we used to hate abandoned calls.
That's the measure now. That's like, if they got what they wanted, then why do you need to stay on the line? So,
You
Yeah.
don't need to call them back.
But how do you know that wasn't somebody who was on hold for too long and gave up?
well, I mean, the key in that time, the volume is coming in all at the same time, so let's keep them informed, you know?
We do get hold times too, so we monitor that.
Oh, okay.
So we monitor that and then we talk to them if there's an issue with hold times, but
Yeah, and we also tell them in the message that if you're calling in to report something else, or if you're calling in to report physical damage, stay on the line. So the whole goal is to get that massive inrush down so that people that have either something else or the physical damage itself, because that's what you want.
Any other commission reports? I see we have our town council liaison. Julie is here. Do you have anything?
No, I'm just interested to hear about the energy part because I know it's coming in front of us on Monday, so I will get that information. We still have some ARPA money we're talking about, and I know that some of the proposals that the MLD put forth will likely be talked about with that. And then we're supposed to talk to all of our liaisons about budgets, but I don't think that actually pertains to you because, right, we still have the pilot and there's really no separate budget.
Right, yeah, we dealt with our budget last month in November. We vote our budget for the next.
So there's nothing that I need to communicate forward on your budget. So I think that's it.
Okay.
This is old news, but do you, I guess as the liaison to the Environmental
Yeah.
Sustainability Committee, there was a vote at the town meeting to adopt the specialized energy code. It was overwhelmingly in support. So that was good. And I thank Dion for coming in and making a presentation to the town and answering all their there's many questions about the value of the code and the impact on the town and customers. So
The presenters did a great job. I mean, I thought that everybody educated people well. And yeah, then you get the questions about like, why didn't we know about this? Well, they explained, we had an information session. It's discussed in town council meetings, environmental sustainability meetings. It was discussed twice in our meetings. It was, so it was, I thought, but they thought with all that, they still did a great job educating everybody. So.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
it's a very
Yeah.
robust discussion as 2 hours on that code alone. And the rest of all the other town business was completed in 30 minutes. So including approvals of millions of dollars in budgets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Okay. This is the time where we would open up the meeting to any public comments. I do see a couple of people from the public. Does anyone from the public wish to speak?
No, I didn't have any comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And you, sir? No. Okay, very well. So let's move on then to the approval of the November 1st minutes. The only thing that I noticed, and I didn't look yet to see if it was corrected, was there was something, okay, it was corrected, so DOE became DOER.
Hmm.
Okay, so I had nothing else.
I saw that as well.
I knew that, that it was probably, Tom would catch that was his section anyways. Any other discussion or proposed changes to the minutes?
Mine were captured and
Captured.
Mine were
Great.
captured.
All right, I'll take any motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the November 1st, 2023 minutes as published in the board book. Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very well. All right, moving on to old business. Pete, you want to take it away with the energy part?
Sure. As many, I think I've shared it, but, the governor, it passed the House, then the Senate, then it went back to the House, and then the governor signed it a couple weeks ago. So the next step in the process, as Julie said, is go to the town. So what happened last November was the town voted to support the creation of the home rule petition, which now has been passed. So now it comes back to the town and the town council will actually grant the easement. So that's what's gonna happen on Monday, hopefully, is that the town council will be asked to actually grant the easement. Once that, and there's other elements to that, obviously, there's the and I was explaining to Julie, Tom Mullen and Mike are working on the wording of the two things, which is Ballister Street's gonna get transferred to the town and become a park. And we're conveying the land, that 2.5 acres behind BB to the Conservation Commission. And there's different wording because we're doing two slightly different things to the land, and Tom and I can't explain it, Tom and Mike know it better. But then the third piece is that we actually have already prepared a plan for the reforestation of that section of the Maple Way. So that we'll plan to do that next year. I believe we're probably gonna do a little bit in the spring, probably preparing, but I think that they're probably gonna recommend that we do the planting in the fall. But we'll work with somebody on that. And we actually are working with Dennis too. And in regard to that, Brett Riley's gonna do the reforestation plan, but you don't want to plant all the same size trees. And Dennis actually has a couple of groups that like to plant like the smaller, like 3-inch trees and like scouts and senior projects and things like that. So he's gonna recommend keeping some areas of that as well mixed into the reforestation. So if a senior project or a Boy Scout project or a Girl Scout project wants to do some planting of the smaller stuff, we'll identify that within that reforestation area too, because it'll be great, because he said he gets approached for those types of things a lot. So we'll identify some sections within there. So we're not just all planting the same, 100 trees that are all the exact same height and everything. You want to have a mix. So he's going to factor that in as well. So we'll work very closely with Dennis on that.
And did Riley Landscaping get this contract because we already used them to?
Yeah, they've already bid on that. We have a 3-year bid with them to do the planting work for us already. So it's part of, he's our arborist and he also does the tree planting for.
Oh, you don't use the old timer who was?
Guy retired. So Guy was a National Grid arborist for years, and when he retired, he worked for us for about 10 years, but then he retired. So,
You see, I didn't know that Brett is our arborist.
yeah, Brett's been an arborist for 3 or 4 years now.
3 years, yeah.
3 years, yeah. And Guy worked with him for
Oh.
over a year. He's done a great, and Brett's been great to work with too. He's been awesome. I don't know if did you see the video?
I did, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that was very good. So he's the arborist, but his landscaping company is also planting our trees.
Yeah.
And are those separate arrangements, separate contracts?
the arborist / planting is one contract. And,
They overlapped and then it went, it's all part of the same contract now. So he originally was the arborist.
Okay,
And then we went out to bid and then he was awarded the tree planting and the arborist work. So tree planting, he
okay,
meets with the customers and then he consults, like when we're doing, he oversees, gets involved with the tree trimming
Mhm.
to make sure that we're removing the right trees, that we're
Okay.
trimming, that we're getting the right clearances. So
Yeah.
he oversees that as well.
yeah, he's done a great job. And the key to our prior success was Guy's relationship with Dennis in the town. And we wanted to make sure that that transferred. So we had him doing the arborist work first and building that relationship with Dennis. And now they work very well together. So we have a 3-year contract now, so.
So it's very involved. I mean, just tree planting alone is an effort with the entire town. We talked to the DPW on roads they're working on, and we have a tree replanting program. So we used to plant trees around town, but now we try to stay focused. So when the town does a street over, the paving and the sidewalk and the curb, the last thing that we do to finish the street is to plant trees in the grass strip. So the residents get a new street, and then we also work with Dennis to say, okay, we'll replant trees on this side under the wires. And then Dennis plants his trees on the opposite side of the street. But the intent is to basically beautify and re-tree that neighborhood where there was a lot of declining trees, no trees.
Dying.
So yeah, dying trees. So we work closely with the town on that program. And then in addition to that, if we remove a tree, because of the tree removal program that we had, has a tree removal program, then we work with Dennis to replant a tree for that. And then we have the program, private property tree planting, where we plant utility friendly trees in the front of folks' homes. And then on the backs, we plant shade trees. So they help with cooling in the summertime.
okay.
So we do that as an individual. So we have that program where we advertise it, they call up, and then they put their name on the list, and then we talk to them and meet with them about the right tree in the right place for them. Yeah. So we have like different programs, but that Brett supports that too. And I work obviously with Brett too on that. So
Okay.
yeah. And then Mayor's part of it. So Mayor does they have a long-term contract.
Yeah, well, so I was wondering if Mayor is not involved anymore.
No, Mayor's.
They're
Yeah.
the trimmer and we have mirroring contracts now. They have 3 more years.
Yep.
And Brett has 3 more years. So they'll keep working together at least for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
And they work in close conjunction with each other. So, but Brett, so Mayor does the trimming and the removals.
Right.
So,
Oh, because I thought you said earlier that Brett is doing the trimming now too.
no. Mayor still does the trimming and removals.
Yeah.
Brett does the planting and the arborist work.
Oh, I get it. All right, thank you.
Will Mike be at the meeting on Monday
Yeah, I think
for any questions?
we're both supposed to join via.
Okay,
Zoom.
great.
Are you reviewing on Monday all of the plans for the 3 for Ballister? And maybe.
I don't know what
is
level
the
it-
extent of the Monday conversation.
I don't know how
Don't
deep
know.
they're gonna want us to go. I don't think we were planning to go that deep,
Okay,
I know Mike and Tom have been working on the legal portion of the 3 things that are required by the home rule petition, so.
okay.
Okay, any other questions on the energy park? All right, what was next on the list here? Fine, so that brings us to community solar. So is Joe taking?
Yeah, well, Joe shared the presentation. We did get some feedback and Joe's gonna share the updates based on the feedback we've received so far. So where we stand right now on this is that we're gonna have that information session on January the 25th. And we are gonna do it in person again at so that's set up for the library. They're moving along quite well, so we expect sometime in early January, we'll be completing work on the roof. They're moving right along.
We have with the library, is that, do we have WCAT to simultaneously?
We're working on it,
Okay.
yeah.
You said that's the 25th?
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, I mean, I can get right into it if, if you guys are ready. So yeah, we sent that out, I think it was a couple weeks ago, the first draft of it. We got some comments back, which was good. So what's kind of been updated is we created an additional slide to say why. So community solar is this good thing, but why are we doing it, and kind of what efforts have we had in the past? Why now? Kind of what the project is. It relates to some of the other information there too, but I think it is good to say these few additional bullet points here to say, we have been doing a lot of stuff with renewables, and this is kind of an area that it opens it up for additional people who didn't have a chance to kind of participate in renewables for X, Y, or Z reasons. It says why the roof is an ideal place to start with community solar, because I think a good point was made. Jen, you had mentioned this is sometimes you think of community solar as a huge solar farm or something to that effect, but this is a smaller scale type of community solar, and I think it's a good pilot program to gauge the interest, and if there is a lot of interest, keeping that wait list and kind of rolling those people who are waiting and creating new projects if there is interest is something that we're definitely interested in doing. So I think that slide kind of captures some of those things. I mean, I'm keeping it high level at the bullet point level, because then some of the additional information will kind of fill the time and talking points. I think sometimes in some of the later slides, as far as the processes and things like that, I wanted to put those as more bullet points, because I think that kind of stuff people won't remember as well, and they can refer back to the slides to see. But in the earlier slides, kind of explaining it on a summary basis, it's good to have the smaller bullet points, and then we can expand upon them with some additional information and things like that. At least that's the strategy that I think we're trying to employ with that. So that's one of the new slides. Most of the other slides are very similar. The additional thing here was we added the payback period, the expected payback, and with a specific note to say these are based on current projected electricity rates. It should be less than a 5-year payback for non-low income. And then, but to have that note there, I think is important too. So you mitigate some of if someone said, well, hey, our payback was 2.5 years, theirs was, more. It depends on where the rates go. And, we can only do with the information that we have currently. We can't predict what's going to happen in the world that could impact the rates going forward. So I think that, and then to say the low income will have immediate benefit. I mean, unless, if they join in the winter, maybe they wouldn't, but, maybe we'd say, maybe wait till the spring if you want that immediate benefit right away. But, and to note that there's the no upfront membership fee. So that was a change here to kind of highlight specifically the payback period, because I know that's important, especially when it comes to rooftop solar. So comparing apples to apples there, I think is a smart thing to do. Besides that, I mean, it's similar to, the slides that were sent earlier. Some of these slides weren't really updated, but important to say performance and seasonality. It's important for them to understand kind of where are your months that you're going to be making money, and where the months you probably aren't going to make money, or, in the shoulder months too, it could go either way depending on where the rates are. So then I have the proposed structure. I stretched these out a little bit because it was a little congested. But I think it's good to have all this information on here, especially for some of this technical stuff to have people refer back to, which may mitigate some questions. Not that we can't answer the questions or wouldn't be happy to answer them. So we're also creating the community solar at WMGLD email. I think it's good to have a separate one. We already have the solar at WMGLD, but I think obviously they're two different programs. So I think all the questions should kind of relate to this new email, which we plan to set up with. There'll be a form that you can request 1 to 5 kilowatts. That's what we're anticipating. And then when that form is submitted by somebody online, that should kick right to to this new email address. Which we'll put it in a separate folder. There'll be an inquiries folder, and then also there'll be a request folder to keep those things separate, even within the email. So that's kind of what I had. Don't know if there was any additional questions, but or slides or pieces of information that you all wanted to see, but that's what we got right now.
I would say I shared the updated slide. Jen had some comments which led to the latest version of it, which we're sharing there, and I shared that with you electronically. So as you have it, if you have additional comments, we have a little bit of time to tweak it, so.
Just in terms of socialization, are we putting for out in the item, bill inserts, webpage, social media, do the patch to just for folks to come
To the information
to the
section,
information
yeah.
section. I think, you know, the wider that we can get it, the more folks to drive interest.
Well, and I guess also will the library be advertising it through their own?
We can ask them.
Yeah, sometimes they have like an update of like events or whatever that
Oh,
they
no.
share, yeah.
Only other question that I have is whether it makes sense to put any sample bills. I don't know if we can mark one up so people can understand better how to read their bills with this added on, whether it's the like maybe two versions of it, one for the low income, one for the regular application, or how the fee is going to show up, the monthly fee and the monthly credit.
We'll try to, we can see what we can do if Jeff can edit something up. It's probably not, we won't have the edit to the billing system done by January, but we can probably mark
one
something
up,
yeah.
Yeah, we should be able to, you know, put at least something together. It might look a little bit, you know, like back of the napkin calculation style, but you know, we can have something.
When I think about like the average customer that doesn't have the full understanding of what
Yeah,
community
yeah.
solar is, like how would they
They can relate it to their.
relate it to their
Yeah.
bill, right? To whether
We'll put up Tom's bill, which is almost 4 pages now, I think. Tom's got a piece of every program we have, so his line items.
not that.
Yeah, I think even show,
You have my permission.
we can even show, you know, what a standard solar bill right now, if you have rooftop solar, looks like, because it'll be
Very similar.
pretty similar, because you're getting the exact same bill credit. So I think that's a good starting place to say, yep, this is what your bill credit looks like. And then, you know, here's where the fee will be. You know, it might not look pretty, but it'll, you know, at this point, but you know, eventually that's what it's going to look like.
That's good.
Yeah, I think the presentation looks good.
Thank you.
One or
And,
two additional quick questions. One is, I think we should emphasize that it's for customers that don't already own solar. I think I see it here.
Mhm. We
But
can
I
put it
think-
earlier too, if that's.
Yeah, it might be helpful just to get people's heads around that it's really for people that haven't participated to date in any of our like solar, that's the intention. The other piece is, I think I saw it in two different parts, that it says the fee structure will be adjusted to increase the benefit for qualifying low income customers. And I actually just don't know what that means.
Where, do you know which slide that was
So
on?
it is, yep, it's on that slide. Go down. Fee structure will be adjusted. So it's under the reserve 25% of the array for low income customers. And it just sounds like it's like we've already adjusted. Will there be further adjustments, I guess?
That makes sense, yeah. I think a tense or a different word there would be more clear. I agree with you.
Maybe it is
Yeah,
already reflects an increased benefit for low income customers or something like that.
yep. That makes sense.
Maybe it's just fee structure is.
Or is, yeah.
Yep.
Enable
Increased,
more benefit
Yeah.
for low income or something like that, yeah.
because it's a statement.
And then there was one more thing, which I think is on the other slide, if my memory serves me, the one below it.
Oh, the one,
I
this
updated
one?
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, yeah, well,
Oh, the request up to 5 kilowatts is, this is maybe a voiceover during the presentation, but somebody might ask if it's binding, right? Like if they sign up today, is it binding or is it like I'm interested, you know?
I think it's kind of to gauge. I would think it's to gauge interest. I mean, that's a good question that I hadn't really thought of the difference between the two. But yeah, someone could originally put down they want 5, but then if it takes 2-3 weeks or whatever the period is until we decide how many you get, they could reconsider.
Yeah, so like at what point does it become, will you be asking for final?
Right.
Like interest essentially?
Yeah, maybe there's a confirmation that gets sent out. You said this, like, you know,
Yeah.
confirm.
So Jennifer.
I think
it was the
the
one,
thought was that we were gonna award one first and give a period of time, maybe 3 months or 6 months to see how we subscribe. And then at that point, if we haven't fully subscribed, then go back to the people that expressed interest in more and then allocate. So I think that was gonna be the way we were gonna do it.
that's maybe it's just the voiceover is that, you know, make the request. Well, if they're first come, first serve on the request list up to 1 until the system's at capacity. If we're not at capacity
We'll go
by
back and-
X date, we'll go back and allocate.
And I think
between
we'll make that a talking.
Yeah.
Someone will say,
2 to 5.
well, it'll be easy to explain that, put it as a bullet.
So just a clarification question, membership sign up and preliminary sign up, is there a difference? Is the
Yes,
membership sign up just to show of interest?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of what we're talking about a little bit here is like that, the difference between the two. I think the first is like the preliminary sign up to me would be that kind of period where you're figuring out the interest and how many kilowatts somebody would want. I think that's like that initial period. And then I think after that would be when you lock in, okay, we give everybody 1. And then I think that's kind of.
Yeah, we would give everybody 1 because we had more than 129 people that were interested in the initial block, or no, we'll give you 1, but we're gonna let the solicitation period stay open longer and then see, and if not, we'll come back to you and try to reallocate, you know, additional kilowatts.
Yeah, maybe,
The hope is that we get a lot of interest early. We fill up the first 129 and we have a waiting list for the next project, you know.
so will the membership sign up form include like how many kilowatts?
Yeah, they'll
Yeah.
request up to 5.
Yeah, okay,
And then once we've had a little bit of time, you know, I think the hope is that after we try to get it, at least the initial group in place by the beginning of, or the end of April, so.
so. I don't know, it would be, I think, more clear just to differentiate the membership sign up from the preliminary sign up. I don't know how you,
Sure, yeah, I'm sure we can think of a better way to call that first period. To not confuse it with the actual binding, so to speak, of
Yeah.
you getting.
maybe customer interest, I don't know, sign up form, I don't know,
Yeah,
or
we'll play with it.
play with the language, okay.
Well, I would suggest just making it 1 bullet and then just explaining the difference within the sub bullets.
Yeah, we'll tweak it.
Okay.
We want to.
We won't wordsmith right now.
Right, that was the point. We don't want to wordsmith in the board meeting.
Okay, when's the deadline for additional feedback?
Probably the first week of January.
Okay.
'Cause we're not having the presentation until the end of.
Okay.
So, yeah, anything you have, we'll send out, we'll make these tweaks and then I'll send out another updated version of it soon, and then if there's any additional stuff, we'll tweak the stuff that we just talked about, and then, we have time before the 25th.
And our meeting in January is the 10th,
Yes,
right? Okay.
and that's the strategic planning meeting.
Will there be website or any, so if we get questions and we answer them in some kind of FAQ, will that go on the website?
Yeah, we'll put
Okay.
it on a tab.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so we have maybe there's a separate, right now we have a solar program thing under the energy efficiency programs tab, so maybe it's an additional item that kind of calls out community solar programs. And then I think it would be I would say we keep it on that homepage that scrolls through as one of those first couple items until, I mean, as long as we want to, but at least through that April, as we're trying to get people to kind of ask about it, learn about it, sign up for it.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to have it as a separate outside of the rooftop solar program incentive rebate.
Yeah.
Have it
Called out so people can see it. So like, I think the most valuable part, as Joe was saying, is on that upper scroll when you first come onto our website. If it's one of the first couple items on that, that's usually what gets the most attention, and they can click on that and it'll take them right to the right place.
Okay, anything further on community solar? All right, so we have until early January to bring additional suggestions to the slides and
We'll get Ian, based on this, and it doesn't seem like we're far away, we'll get Ian to work on like a one page or a front and back, like kind of marketing flyer based on the data that's on here now too. So
to have ready at the,
Yeah.
as a handout.
as a handout,
Or bill inserts, right?
yeah.
Okay,
Just one more comment. I'm not sure if this would be helpful, but since the benefits and the costs are separate for low income and low income, does it make sense to kind of separate that information so that it's clear?
On separate slides and
Like, or within the same slide?
So, I mean, some of the slides are a little bit more cumbersome, like some of these ones here, like if you're looking at the structure, it does break it down there. And then there's a couple bullets on this slide. These were bullets that we added. This was from Jen's edits. We added a couple of those ones here that I mean, it's not like maybe it's a talking point thing, or maybe, we decide we want more information. I think that's, you guys could come to the consensus on that, but I think we could do it either way, for sure.
I mean, maybe not so much on the benefits, but on the structure of the programs or because it's kind of mixed in, and maybe that was the intentional, but for clarity.
Yeah, so maybe, maybe it's 2 columns instead of it being a bulleted list on this structure page. Maybe it's broken. Here's like the non-low income, here's the low income,
The
but same
table.
information, but it's a table instead of it being a bulleted list.
Yeah, I like that. I like the table idea where you have one next to the other, so people are clear on what the
Which,
differences are. And
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you keep these 2 bullets and then right under it, once you start talking about the fees or maybe something like that. But I'll play around with it.
Okay,
Yeah, and I don't think you need to be limited in terms of the number of slides here. I mean, I think if you need more space to make the words a little bit bigger, you can, I don't think you have a ton of slides, so I think it's okay.
Break it into 2.
Yeah, break it
Yeah.
into more.
We can do that.
great. Thank you.
thanks, Ray.
thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. You're not done with me yet, though.
Very well. Moving on to energy efficiency programs.
So last month, we approved the budget for next year, and then we talked about the programs and the tweaks we were gonna make to the offerings. So we felt the best way to do it would probably be to just look at the 23 rebate sheet and discuss the potential changes, So Joe will go through this, and we did look into the induction range issue, and I talked to Craig in Belmont, and the way they do it is that for for the two different levels, if you want the higher level, you have to show that you removed the gas stove. And so you have to have a picture before and after, and it has to show, it can't just be a picture that you could have taken at Home Depot. It has to show your it has to show the old gas stove and it's clearly a gas stove, and the new stove and it's clearly an induction stove in your kitchen. So he says that we play games sometimes because some people try to mess around, but for the most part, people are good about understanding. It's got to be a representative picture that shows that you made the change.
They're not like photoshopping it into somebody else.
I guess if they want to spend that much
Lot of-
time photoshopping, then they can, but.
Just threaten, like.
Yeah, yeah.
It's gonna
No,
work.
Yeah, we would reserve the right to not.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do.
That's all you have to do.
Yeah, but so basically, that's what Craig said, that's the way they do it, because I was concerned, if you remember, I was concerned about having to do post audits, and so he said, no, we just rely on pictures
Okay, great.
And just put that caveat, we reserve the right
to inspect.
to inspect.
Yeah,
Just the threat of that, I think, will turn people off from gaming.
Plus, we all know one another in this town, so somebody will see it one day and be like, wait a minute.
Yeah, thank you. I think that will move the needle on
yeah,
getting people to switch from their gas to their electric.
yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of discussion of that the specialized energy code at the state level, that the DPU just issued an order to the,
28, it
Yeah,
just came out.
yes, today,
One
so,
of the items I want to bring up later.
Yeah,
in
it's,
regards to how's that gonna be impacting us, but
yeah, and that's, I mean, I think directly, not too bad, but globally, it's a big deal, so, you know. So yeah, I mean, I think it's consistent with what's going on across the industry, so. So we've dropped the gas, hot water heater rebate. We've added we had the induction range last year. We're gonna add another level to that we just talked about.
Yep. Yeah, so basically what I tried to do was stuff that's highlighted in red is getting removed. The things that are highlighted yellow are gonna be altered in some way. So, I mean, it didn't change that much as far as the rebate sheet goes. I mean, except for the heating and cooling section, definitely shook that one up a little bit, but removing the gas heat system there and the corresponding bullet point to that. And then, so one thing we are doing too is we'll be, instead of giving away a free charger now, because instead of managing that inventory, because what we find is people go through the application process and there's still at least like 10 or 15 applications that are open from 5 or 10, 5, 6, 7 months ago. So it's like it's hard to know how many chargers we should buy and have in inventory. So what we came up with is we'll give them the 3 charger brands that you can integrate with our program, and it will just be similar to another rebate. And as long as they sign up for the charging agreement and do all the things that they usually were doing, then it's all kosher, I think. So I think that makes it an easier process administratively for us, and it still offers the same exact benefits, and it actually gives the customer a pick of 3 different charger brands. I think it's definitely ChargePoint, Juicebox, and then Emporia is a new one that I believe integrates with MWIC's program there. So that's one of the changes there.
So the exact changes, you'll get one of 3 charger options instead of one option.
No, so I'm sorry if I didn't mention this, they'll go buy the charger. They'll buy the
Oh, got
charger.
You don't have to keep an
It
inventory.
becomes a rebate, we're not gonna provide it anymore.
Thank you, sorry.
Sorry, maybe I didn't say that, but yes, that's the not keeping the inventory. It makes it easier for us if they go buy a qualifying charger, because in some cases the chargers, maybe before it was harder to get them in bulk, but now for the chargers, at least the ChargePoint one that we give out, you can go on Amazon and get it primed in like 2 days, probably 3 days. So if they get it primed in 2 or 3 days, or they can go to Home Depot and get it ordered and it comes in 2 or 3 days, why do we need to be keeping the inventory for it if we can give them the same monetary benefit, basically? So that was the logic there, I think.
Joe, I have a question.
Sure.
How often would we update the, I guess, the list of qualifying chargers? Is that, do you look at that on an annual basis? I mean, I don't know how fast the technology changes or the
So,
models change.
so MWIC manages that program. Luckily, I am on the subcommittee for the Next Zero program, so I actually do have a little bit of say and knowledge into that. And so what we do is we look at it. I would say it's a topic that comes up at least a few times a year. I think a couple if it's a lesser year, but it seems like it's a topic that comes up at least a couple times a year. And I think it was one for, I think it was ChargePoint at first, and then it was ChargePoint Juicebox, and then recently Emporia came on. I think Tesla doesn't really play nice with the controlling charger aspects of it, if you can believe it. And I guess as more ones kind of come into the market or are more accepting of this style of program, I think as long as there's not some crazy fee that's associated with it. So I think that's the problem too, is like, there's certain ones that would charge an exorbitant fee for those charges to be.
Yeah, well, we're finding that like Nest thermostats are more restrictive than a regular other type of thermostat in terms of the integration for control. So, it's like Tesla. Nest doesn't play well with the programs like this. So, yeah, it's Google.
It's Google.
So there's somebody,
So MWEC is monitoring that and the net zero program. And as we can add devices that we can integrate with through the Connected Homes program, things get added.
Okay.
Yeah, I like this change, obviously it opens up 2 additional chargers as well, and right on our side, not having to have the inventory, I think is good as.
I was gonna love not having the boxes in our office all the time. Because again, as Joe said, they'll sign up and then we take it out of our inventory and set it aside with like paperwork on it for somebody to pick up, and sometimes they pick it up the next day and sometimes 4 months later, it's still sitting there, so.
Joe, before you move to the next page, on
Sure.
the home battery storage, it talks about capacity, but it mentions kilowatt hours, and I just wanted to know if that was a typo, or should those be kilowatts instead of kilowatt hours?
They might have, yeah, I think you may be right there. I'd have to double check on that, but I think
It is
that
on a
would be,
KW basis.
It's on a KW basis, so.
Yep. So that makes, yeah.
Okay.
I'll fix that.
All right, and Joe, maybe that because it's more around MWEC, but just in my little experiment of getting quotes for solar and battery, the $100 per KW install doesn't move the needle at all in battery storage at this point in time. Is more batteries coming into the program, because the program is pretty restrictive. I think there's just 2
Right.
batteries. And then are we looking at other ways to?
Joe, are they looking at,
integrate?
I think we're trying to be consistent with the MWEC program on that one. Are they looking at?
That's an MWIC program right now too, and I think because not a lot of people are doing it, I think they kind of put this out as a pilot program. I don't know that there's very many people who have taken advantage of it. I know that nobody in Wakefield has, but I would have to, in the next subcommittee meeting, that could be a topic I can bring up as something that, to talk about how many of because then of the 40, I think it's 30 members of MWIC, how many of those actually opted into the program? I think it's only like maybe 10. It might be even less than 10. We might be one of like 9 or 8 or so municipalities that have kind of put this program on the books, so to speak.
Yeah, it's pretty restricted. So one of the things out of all the installers that I talked to, which was 6, none of them installed either one of the batteries. So I think that's part of the issue why there's no uptake on it.
The brand of
The 2 brands of batteries, which I think one is Sonos,
Zonin
and the other one
Generac.
Generac, and none of the installers, even if I was like, can you install either one of these? You know, just kind of seeing how that, and they were like, no, we don't install either one of those brands.
Well, you can bring it up with Zoe at the next meeting and see if there's any feedback about how to grow that program. Maybe it is increasing the rebate level a little bit. We're obviously so far, this is a new program. We haven't wanted to step away from the MWEC model yet, but.
Agree, you know, and obviously they need to be able to control it. So,
Right.
right, there's the manufacturers that allow the control that then, you know, play well with the MWEC control plane.
Exactly.
And then, right, you have to have the installers to do it. So if, you know, the 6 installers I talked to, none of them would even if I was like, I want you to go with the Generac, and they're like, we won't install that for you. So I know it's definitely, you know, there's challenges around there.
Good topic for the next meeting.
Yeah, I'll
FYI,
definitely bring that up.
it's just anecdotally related to this, but under Mass Save, the program administrators, so you know, National Grid, Eversource, and all the other program administrators have joined together with Generac to supply, I guess, for an additive program so that their battery works with certain energy efficiency, you know, active, I think, demand response type programming. And so Generac actually went for a federal grant and won with the support of the program administrators as part of under Mass Save. So that's something that's forthcoming. So maybe you'll see
that drives
more
demand,
Generac
installers,
in Massachusetts.
I think it will definitely have an impact then,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
hopefully it
Generac
slows
back
down.
too. So yeah, it's a good topic for the next meeting with Zoe.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think the other question I have is to what extent do people know about it? Because I don't know that I've heard us talk.
We haven't done a lot of promotion yet because
Yeah.
it's coming out of the gate, but
I mean, do we talk about it when people call about solar, or I don't know where it makes sense to kind of like co-market that, but
Well, definitely with solar.
Yeah.
'Cause I can't imagine one doing it without having a solar system.
yeah.
I mean, sometimes people do it separately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Mass Save one actually doesn't require solar. You know, it's the demand response rate, fill low, so you know, overnight. The utility will recharge the battery, and then the utility will deplete it during the peak. And then the benefit to the homeowner or the business, whoever has the battery, is they get a, you know, per dispatch or per month, like call it a $50 credit, $100 credit, and then they also get the arbitrage between the you know, what it costs to fill it
Mhm.
and the lower rates, and then they get the difference.
Interesting, cool. All right, do you have more to go through?
I mean, not really. That's the old one in comparison to the new one. The new one just reflects the changes we've talked about. It adds the line for induction that says replacing gas is 500. And it says see below, because then it will show you, it'll say, you know, you got to send pictures. I mean, that'll be on the rebate form too. It'll be a separate, like, if, you know, if you're replacing gas, make sure you include so, I mean, it's pretty, you know, self-explanatory as far as going from the old sheet to the new one and kind of the changes there. And just adding some language that in places where it says the rebate cap's 2,500, just adding language to say, you know, with the exception of the heat pump bundles listed above, because I think that's just good, because that'll be a question that somebody definitely asks is, well, it says down here, you know, it's only a $2,500 per year rebate cap. Like, how is this going to work? So this kind of supersedes that original limit. And I think that's how we're, you know, obviously trying to design it.
Pete, have you gotten to the point where you had to actually close rebates at the end, you know, toward the end of the year because of?
we've overspent before, but we've just allowed it to flow into the next year. We haven't actually shut anybody
Oh, okay.
Ever. I mean, I think it hasn't really been the goal to try to cap it just at the dollar amount. So, you know, when we looked at the budget last, I mean, we're slightly over the 700 grand. But I mean, is it worth telling people no for that small amount? I guess if we were, and that's part of the reason we're trying to mirror the energy conservation charge with the offerings and like, and that, so last month when we said, we'll set the budget here, we're not gonna increase the energy conservation charge. And we're gonna tweak these programs, one of which is to reduce the solar credit to, you know what I mean? So we're trying to analyze both those things together. And if we're keeping it pretty close, then, you know, I don't think it's gonna make a big difference in the overall rate of return. We're, you know, as long as we're, for the most part, right there, then that's close enough. I mean, I think if we ever saw that, like, solar had gone through the roof, or, you know, the heat pump thing, the changes we're making are taking off, we might have to reach that point. But we've never been at that volume where it all of a sudden took over and was gonna move the needle significantly.
Yeah, because it'd be awful if somebody went ahead and, you know, had their audit and then put all the stuff in, and then all of a sudden, you know, well, it's December, we don't have any more money in the budget. You know, that would stink.
Honestly, what we would do most likely is hold on to theirs till the next financial window and hold off taking new ones in, is more likely what we would do. You know, if we ever had to do that, and we haven't had to, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if somebody's already committed, we would just delay, if we were out of money, which Mark says we are all the time, but if we were out of money, we would probably just wait till the next, and then pay those off before we started to accumulate new ones, you know what I mean? And then at the same time, we would have to discuss the energy conservation, you know, that annual change, you know, do we jack up the energy conservation charge a little bit because of that? But, you know, we've never been at the point where.
Yep, I think if we ever get to that point, though, just give us
Yeah, we'll
a
be.
lot of early notice
Yeah,
of
we'll-
Plenty.
what to do.
Yeah, and there is nothing that would preclude us from adjusting the energy conservation charge at a different time, but it's never been that bad.
It's never been that.
Well, I think the beauty of it too is because it's calendar year programs, but fiscal year budget, you only miss by 6 months, but because then as you're making the new budget, you can kind of impact that. You get that visibility into what the next program kind of should be.
And a lot of the stuff we do is in that, I mean, this world is constantly changing, so a lot of the stuff we do is in quote unquote pilot mode. We're testing it and seeing what impact it has and then tweaking it the next year. So, and that's been true of this part of the world for the past 30 years, 25 years. I was at Boston Edison in the late 80s, early 90s when we were doing load management programs, and they were changing every year, you know, so.
Okay,
Can I just see one other thing? Can you show the tiering for what it looks like with the weatherization piece in there and what that looks like?
So it looks like this, so it's still draft, so I mean, if there's ways we want to clean it up a little bit, I think, you know, it's definitely open to doing that. I think we probably try to roll this out early January is the plan, so.
If you have, this is in your inbox, so if you have,
Yeah, Jen, if you want to see the.
yeah, I don't know if we want to proofread it here, you can just.
No, that's okay. Just another look at it. I just wanted to be really clear that like what the difference is, so I'll just take a look at it.
Yeah.
Separately, but yeah, thank you for pointing me to it so I can.
Yep, yeah, no problem at all.
Cool, good job, Joe, thank you.
Thanks.
No problem.
Joe
Now
and
you-
Adam was a big help with tweaking these quickly.
so if this is still being tweaked, are you asking for a vote on something right now, or?
Well, is the wording is being tweaked, we can continue to tweak the wording, are we comfortable with this being the program? In other words, the 2 levels of the induction and the multi-levels of the heat pump and the insulation. Are we comfortable with this being the program? We could tweak the words, but, or polish up the handout, but are we comfortable with this being our program offering for next year?
I think the only thing that I noticed in there is on the yard equipment, it's limited to 1 per year. If somebody's gonna take the initiative to convert or get rid of all of their gas, leaf blowers, small blowers, and hedges and trimmers.
So,
Is there an opportunity there to maybe lift that limit from 1 to maybe 2 or not put a cap at all? Even though the rebates are small.
Would it be better to say one per, device type?
Yeah,
No.
per item per year.
Can you
We
put it
want-
back up? Can you put it back up on the screen?
That's
Yeah, I think
right.
that's-
One
Yeah,
lawnmower,
sure.
Yeah, one lawnmower, one per,
one trimmer, one.
yeah, device type.
Right.
Yeah, because you're gonna invest in a lawnmower, you're gonna use that battery for
Probably want to get rid of.
your broke.
Things like the, plastic.
Yeah, a lot of, and some of them are selling the
bullet,
blower,
second
the
bullet
trimmer and the
down.
head. I think is the Ryobi, which
Oh,
one
no,
of them is selling a multi-pack now. You
Exactly.
can buy the blower, the trimmer and, I think that.
Black Friday special.
Yeah,
So I think it already, so I do think it already says that. I mean, maybe there's a clearer way to say it, because I think it says 1
yeah,
yard.
per year, per item.
Year
Oh,
per
okay.
item.
Maybe I missed it, yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, we can tweak it a little bit to make it clear if that's.
I missed that too.
So if a couple people missed it, maybe more people missed it, and it's maybe put the per item or something clear in the front of it to kind of, to get people to know that they can, in fact, apply for multiple ones.
and this has been a very successful, we added the snow blowers late last year, so we'll see what happens with the snow blowers more this year. But the other parts have been very, very popular.
Yeah, this is taken off as like, it rivals the like appliances as a whole. Like as far as like rebates processed, I think, going back into the, I'd have to go back into the numbers, but I'm pretty sure it kind of lines up.
Got 60 already in FY 24.
The snow blower should be, depending on how much snow we get.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. So I guess the question is, I mean, aside from wording and tweaking clarifications, are we comfortable with this being the program? So,
How do people feel?
I think the,
Did we vote the last time?
I don't think we took a vote on it.
Ah, okay.
so as long, I mean, if the board
I
is
think we all-
comfortable with this being the program,
I like the changes this year. You know, I think, again, they're reflective of, the, things going on out there in the world and, you know, move where we want to move to as well in the goals.
Yep, I agree.
Great.
Is there a motion?
I think she said we don't have to vote as long as we have the direction to go. That's,
Oh, we don't, oh, okay.
if you want to vote, that's great. It doesn't matter.
I think we voted the changes last.
Did we? Well, okay, so
Yeah,
Oh.
I think we voted the changes.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Make a motion.
excellent. All right, so moving on then,
Or we voted, or, okay.
Wait, did we vote the changes last
Think
time
we-
or not?
I think we voted the budget. You always vote.
We voted the budget, but not,
These are the things we're gonna do with the budget, so. I think what Jen was saying, is in the past, we haven't voted the things we were gonna do with the budget. We just shared it and talked about it.
More administrative.
Yeah. On the strategic planning thing, I shared the little like thoughtful questionnaire that John Wortman put together. We don't need to talk about it tonight, but it was designed to just get people thinking for the meeting. If there's anything else we want to add to make sure that I share with John as we prepare for that meeting.
Well, I just had a question. Is he going to collect, like, is the start of the meeting him collecting this information?
No, I think he was more putting it out there for things to think about, to be prepared to talk about. So if you have, I think as an outline, he'll try to cover these topic areas, but for the most part, I think it was just for you to have, put some thought into it as we try to tailor and guide a strategic planning meeting.
Okay, and my only other question is, will he explain? I think I need an explanation of the communication tendencies.
Okay.
Like just where he's headed with this,
Okay,
these questions, that's all. So maybe he'll tee it up and then we can
I can get him to send an email defining that, just so he,
just like,
Sure.
what is debate over, I mean, it's. Yeah, I'm just not clear on,
What was the other one?
well, internal, external, deductive, inductive, debater, please, are kind of like what.
Some of that he will definitely,
Frame it up, yeah,
Yeah.
so we know where he's headed with this. That would be great.
I think he wanted, or I took it was, what do you see yourself as a, internal or external, a deductive or inducive? And then I was guessing he was gonna ask us why you think you're a debater versus a pleaser. That was just my interpretation.
some of that stuff we'll probably pass over quickly because it's gonna be more about. The fact that we've done some of this work already and we're trying to take what we have to the next place.
And the last time, if you could just refresh my memory, that there was already, the last time you met with him, a vision statement and a mission statement was crafted, right?
So we actually did that prior to engaging with John.
Oh, I see.
In prior sessions that we've done as a board. The missions, it's actually on our
It's on the website.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was just wondering
Yeah, he wasn't
why is
really-
he revisiting? it?
He wants to kind of ratify it as a first step.
Oh, I see.
Do we want to share topics and ideas of what we want to discuss during that meeting, or
Sure.
do we hold it back until that meeting?
No, I mean, if there's stuff you want me to share with him, if there's other things you want me to share with him to be prepared.
Or even.
Now, yeah, I mean,
With
I'll,
us,
huh?
even with the commissioners.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If you have ideas that you want me to make sure I share with him before, then that's fine. You guys can.
Yeah, it seems like it seems like it could be helpful to collect from us, what are we doing really well and what are our problem statements, or I don't know.
Okay,
Those two things maybe, so you can see
your view of,
what we're gonna be dealing with
yeah,
in the moment. Or what everyone's thinking, plan for that maybe a little.
yeah. So yeah, if you want to get that to me by the end of the year, then I can get it to him before the January 10th session.
And I don't know if there are other ones, Ellen, that you think are important here. Those are the two biggies.
The way I'm thinking is even from like a structure of the discussion perspective, like what do we want to focus on? Do we want to focus on what we would need to accomplish over the next, like a set time period? Do we need to have multiple time periods where we want to?
I think that's where, I think that was the feedback I got. This is more his generic outline, I think, for these types of sessions, but I did share with him, because I think the last time we talked about it a couple months ago, I did share with him that concept that we really want to think about that, the like different time windows, and starting to look out 5 years and then longer term.
Especially with 2080 order.
Yeah.
I think in a previous meeting, we had laid out some of
Yeah.
the recommendations from the board.
Right, and I'm sharing that with him.
Okay,
And Jed's edits to those minutes, she kind of bulletized it a little bit, which was helpful. I think it was actually used, I did share that with him so that it made it easier for him to understand what we were talking about.
okay.
Okay, so we all set on that? Very well. So the next issue is the tariff on bill financing. And so this was an issue that came up as an inquiry from one of our ratepayers. I presume it was a ratepayer. Someone on Facebook had made the suggestion. And so I said, let's go ahead and put it on the agenda. And so Pete, I know you've spoken to Ipswich.
Yes.
Can you walk us through their experience?
Yeah, so I mean, they were studying this program for a little while, then John Blair left. They have an acting manager right now, and they have rolled out a pilot. They're doing up to 5 projects right now. The first of which was highlighted in that article. That was in the, I think it was in the Globe, and or at least it might have been, it was and the data sheet that I included in the board package was from that project. And so I talked to him a little bit about how it's working. The key to understand with this program right now is that it's being funded by a grant from the state. And they're also trying to apply for some federal money for it, but it's not being funded by the ratepayers, and that's huge. That's a, and so I guess the question becomes long-term. So here's what happens with this type of thing is that, so when the DOER put out some seed money for the solar program, we did it and we matched the rebate. And then after the seed money went away, we kept the rebate going. Do we want to do the same thing with this type of project? And my personal opinion is I think this is still too far in its infancy and there's too many questions about this type of program to say that, okay, let's go try to get a grant. And then if you get the grant, are you prepared to use ratepayer money for this going forward? Because there's a lot of, I keep describing this is the popsicle headache. This project is it's got so many issues with it, such as, okay, you're gonna lay out the money in advance. You're gonna use, past the grant phase. Are you gonna use ratepayer money in advance to invest in Joe Smith's house for $15,000 that you're gonna collect back over the next 20 years without a lien, without a contract that says you own a piece of that house until they pay it off? What's the transfer protocol? If Joe sells his house, do we collect the rest of the money back at the time of sale? But so if you don't collect it back at the time of sale, what's the, how have you tied in a grant or some kind of something that attaches that? So what's to stop, Sharon buys your house and then Sharon says, I didn't sign up for this and I don't have anything that says I owe this anymore. Well, I'm not paying, I'll pay you what I use for electricity, but I'm not paying you that extra fee. That was the other guy. I'm not doing that. So what are the protections around that? So these are a lot of the questions that we have. And so that's a real concern about this type of program. So this is the kind of place where I don't know if we want to be in the bleeding edge of it. I personally don't agree with this type of program. The other program that the customer pointed out was the New Jersey program, which is more of a 0% interest loan type of program through a third-party financer. And I think that type of program is something more reasonable that puts, I mean, we could fund something like that through energy conservation budgeting if we chose to in the future. But at the same token, I don't know if this is ready for prime time. I'm curious to see how the pilot works. Especially in the, when you get down to the nitty gritty of the real issues that are associated with. So the customer that signed up for this in Ipswich that was quoted in the paper is not gonna have a problem paying their bill, But what happens when you try to do this with the customer that is at that next place where they do have trouble paying their bill? Do they qualify for shut off or not? So say you have a $50 line item on your bill for this, and then you have a $42 energy charge and you only pay the $42. Because you didn't pay the $50 line item charge, am I gonna shut you off? Am I not? So all those things are in play, and that's why I call it the popsicle headache, because it's really, there's a lot of those issues.
Didn't John give us a presentation about this pilot at MWEC a few years ago?
Yeah.
And they were doing the tariff on the meter, which, I don't know how that transfer rate, because that was part of it, was the tariff on the meter doesn't, regardless of who owns or rents, it's on the bill. But they were also describing that the seed money was to be spent to seed the program, but then the charges coming back in, that tariff would fund additional as it's coming in. So there was that balance of, right, the seed goes out and then you're collecting some of that amount back year over year, and the next year funds another 5 projects because you've gotten that money back. And that was at least the premise of that. But yeah, it did seem that there are challenges around that, but the concept is interesting.
It is. Mark had a whole list of questions that he came up with, obviously from the financial side. He wrote a white paper. So. Anything else that I missed, Mark?
Well, I mean, one of the other things we talked about, Pete, is so if it is beneficial for, let's take that, that those folks in Ipswich, if it was, let's say it's a family of four type thing, and the net energy savings was going to be X or X plus one over the next 10, 12, 15 years. And then 2 years, 3 years into it, the house turns over and new occupants comes in and it's, a family of one or a family of two or a family of 10. So, the consumption patterns are going to be, your actual results may differ on those energy efficiency improvements, correct?
Yeah.
So, we talked about that. And it is going to be, the popsicle headache is on the administrative burden, definitely. Customer files for bankruptcy, what happens? Those are some of the questions. There's going to be a whole litany of disclosures for a house, rewriting a mortgage, that type of thing. I mean, you presumably would have to let the next occupant, once the house turns over, you'd have to let that person know what they're walking into for a utility bill, or, if an attorney or a mortgage, somebody like that doesn't, disclose all those terms, and, there'd be some, some problems with that.
The one thing I did bring up, and they are, the one thing that they do well, and I understand a little bit better now, is, so the reality of the case of the one that was in the paper was that the person was switching off of oil onto electric. So his $100 electric, so we're not providing any of the savings. The savings comes from the fact that he's not buying oil anymore, because his electric bill is going to go from $100 to $400 or $500. So that's great. We're not giving him any discount. We're not giving him any savings. We're just basically giving the loan to do the upgrades. The savings comes from over here. So what happens in this is that they're very involved in the energy audit, and the energy audit more or less becomes part of the contract to some extent. So that part is a little bit more solid. And as I shared what was in this, that's part of that. So I do think that I was kind of worried about that we're going to try to fund, when we say we're going to fund this through the energy savings is coming from another commodity. So, it's not, we're not giving them all this money to put electric infrastructure in their house and go convert to heat pumps, and then saying, oh, and by the way, your electric bill is going to be lower, because your electric bill is going to quadruple. So, that part of it needs to be understood up front, so, and I think that I was a little worried about that. The good part about this is it was, a very specific customer that was well-versed on the topic, so it worked out okay. But, there's a lot of layers of work on that for the general population, you know what I mean? They're gonna say, my electric bill was $100 and now it's $350. Why is that? Well, yeah, but you don't have an oil bill anymore, and making sure that that's crystal clear. So in the agreement, they basically spelling that out more or less up front. So it's clear that, you're not getting it. Your electric bill is definitely going up. So that type of thing.
I like the agreement, and to your point, maybe the 0% loan through a bank or a financing arm might be cleaner and easier, and we're not taking on that risk and liability.
Right.
And it really, Tom, it really gets the customer to the same place, doesn't it? You know what I mean?
I mean, I think that's what we want to drive to, but at the same token, not have risk and liability on our side where we can minimize it.
Right.
And Joe, there was, MWEC was working, I don't know, maybe you can bring that up again. I know that they were putting that program forward, kind of consolidating that through the pooled loan program. I don't know what step they're at on that. Maybe you could prod them a little bit, next meeting.
Yeah, I think that was in the last meeting. I think discussions were beginning on kind of the function of that. So I think next meeting should be pretty soon. I think there's one more before, the holidays and things. So I can ask that question too.
One of the things that I did like about the at least the concept of the tariff on meter was, especially in the rental space where the presentation that we got at MWAC 2 years ago kind of modeled that out as like the renter was getting the benefit from that. They were paying the tariff. But then, right, rentals can turn over. And so the next tenant, that tariff was on their bill as well. And they were also getting, benefit from those improvements that were made prior.
But in those situations, that's the part that gets a little sketchy is to like, well, wait a minute, so I have this $87 electric bill plus this $25 charge for some, why am I paying that? And those are all, and one of the things that in talking to them, they are trying to do a renter right now, but it's a tri-party agreement between the renter, the landlord, and the light department, so that the landlord is involved in the whole discussion. So, and there's got to be some kind of guarantee that the landlord's either disclosing that or they're signing up to, if somehow there's a dispute, the landlord's involved in that, and so that's one of the things he shared, when I talked to him a couple of weeks ago.
So there's definitely challenges and considerations, but that was just one aspect, right? We see it time and time again with the housing stock, some of the least efficient stock that we have in town are rental units. And so how do we push the needle in that space? We do have a lot of landlords that don't, do anything in terms of efficiency because it doesn't really change because they're not consuming the energy. So how do we help those folks in rentals to push the efficiency needle? Because that's where they make their savings and be more comfortable. So I just don't know how we figure that out, but that was one of the things that intrigued me about this concept when it was brought to us.
I'm interested to see how that piece of the program goes. And he said he's involved in that. So the landlord and the renter that's driving it are involved in that tri-party agreement right now. So it'll be interesting to see how he makes out with this like a year down the road, and looking at how these projects evolve.
Yeah, we're dealing with something similar. We're utilizing the energy efficiency or mass save program agreement between landlord, tenant, and the utility. And we're gonna use that for a pilot we're gonna be doing for converting people from electric to gas. But it does become, to Tom's point, it does become challenging for the landlords to come up with the upfront cost to make all those investments. In the cases that we're thinking about, we weren't going to be making the tenants responsible for anything because at the end of the day, if they're moving out, there's nothing they'll benefit from.
Right.
But again, it will be challenging in regards to how are the landlords going to be funding and investing and putting up with the capital upfront. There's a lot of talk with DOER, Mass CEC in regards to building electrifications and how we're going to be funding that or what type of state programs would be available for it. So to your point earlier, I'd rather have this played out a little bit more before we start coming up with any programs that will create a nightmare for the department to track the charges and figure out how to finance all of this.
We've talked about in the past, this idea about using some local banks for.
And we do have that program.
Yeah, I wanted to get an update on where we stand with that.
Mark, I don't know if anybody
Financing
taking advantage of it.
Numbers are too, the
As
percentage.
far, yeah, we do referrals, all the time. We turn them over to the savings bank and, the loan servicing people, do the discussion, with the people, with the customers. To date that I know of, I don't think we've had any uptake on that, but the program is there. So.
Is there any possibility?
Are we doing like the administrative fees for that or something?
So-
Something
Yeah, so
Yeah.
what we pay for what we subsidize is we'll pay for the loan closing costs and any of that, and we also buy the interest rate down. I want to say it's 0.5 point from whatever it is now. So I mean, before interest rates, kind of went up, it was still relatively very, very cheap money. I think it was, 2-3%, and then we bought it down by a half a point, so it was still in the, maybe in the twos or low threes or something like that.
That's all changed.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
maybe
all
that's
changed
where.
now, but even
we-
at that, those low rock bottom rates, like I said, there was still no uptake on it, so.
Well, have we, now that, there's no federal grants available, have we considered applying for a grant for the subsidy? To increase the subsidy?
Yep, so the path that we're taking now, we were just talking about it with Joe, is it's through MWIC and it's gonna be aggregated, and I think there's strength in numbers there. There's gonna be some economies of scale if when the MWIC program kind of takes off. So I think that's the focus that we're
Okay.
looking at now. And I'm assuming Joe, and I don't know, it'll be 0%. I don't know.
Will it be like similar to the Mass Save program, which is, I think, 0% interest for 7 years?
I'm not sure the
Not sure
term.
about how many years, but I do think that's the design, or at least the focus of the program is a 0% kind of basis there. And yeah, and a lot of the grants, I think, require you to kind of collaborate with a lot of different other, groups or people or things like that. So that's why, like, depending on the grant offering, a lot of the federal ones are so big that you got to partner with other utilities. And I think MWIC provides that kind of on a base level, and it's helpful if they manage it and kind of, and with our input too, that the subcommittee kind of helps with that too, which is good.
Or would MWIC, maybe MWIC could be an eligible entity to apply for that
I think
funding?
that's what he said.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly. I think
Okay.
that's kind of what either they've done, or I believe that's what they've done, and where this kind of the funding for this is going to come from, or at least some of the funding from it. I know that they're working on, there's a solar for all that they applied for, I think with E&E as well. So there might be something that comes down the pipeline as far as they were toying around a couple ideas, whether it was like a big community solar type farm that people, membership utilities can then be a part of, or if it was going to be a rooftop solar type program. I think there's a low income focus on the solar for all. I remember reading the notice of funding opportunity for that, but I was thinking, we could take advantage of this Wakefield, but then the minimum funding opportunity for that's like $25 million or $50 million. It was something crazy, and you needed to collaborate. So I punted that one to MWIC, and I think they did end up applying for that. So
Are these grants similar to the previous round where the utilities have to come up with up to 50 or more?
So, some of the grants require a cost share, yeah. But if you're a smaller utility, the cost share it's not 50-50, I think it's like 30-70. And then for some programs, there is no cost share, but, yeah. Okay.
So I had a question for the board members, because I actually don't remember what the Ipswich presentation was like, and felt like it could be really helpful to have seen the original presentation that was given.
All right, I'll share it.
Because this is helpful, but I think there's like a framing that presentation provided.
Yeah.
And I don't remember it enough.
I'll review it too, because in talking to them so John Blair left, they have a new manager, and they're just rolling it out now. So I'll try to look at that presentation, to see what's been tweaked a little bit since then, since the original presentation, because I don't think, like I said, when I heard John's presentation, which I heard like 3 times, and every time I heard it, I told him it gave me a popsicle headache thinking about all the problems. And he would laugh every time. But I think some of those things that Mark and I and other people that were getting that same headache I think some of that was tweaked into this.
Okay.
Like I said, one of the things that I really understand a little bit better now is when you're establishing the agreement, it's based off an energy audit that's very integrated with the auditor, the homeowner, and the utility, and you're all basically signing off on the audit and the measures. And the other thing about that is that as they're paying back, they're paying $8 for the installation over the next 10 years, and they're paying $21 for the heat pumps over the next 6 years. So it's not just, it's $50 a month for the next 10 years. It's very graduated based on the measures. And so there's a little, and that's why it's so integrated into the audit itself, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, so I think it would be good to really understand what that program is. And I have to say, I feel ill-prepared tonight to talk about this because I don't really understand where it ended up and what they're actually doing.
Well, if you go to their website, there isn't any information. I was looking for, it's because it's a pilot.
Yeah.
And there's no
The
terror.
other part was it was funded by a DOER grant of like 125 grand, I think was the grant, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be good to just go through that again. And then do you know when results will be available? Like any, I mean, are we talking about years here?
Oh, we're talking about a year or two. at least,
Okay.
Yeah,
Just.
I mean, he's just,
It sounded like it started in September.
yeah, he just did the first project, so,
Okay.
I mean, he might have some results next year, but. I mean, the layers of the questions are still gonna be longer than that, you know? so.
Right, okay.
But I think the goal is to do 5 projects over the next year, including at least 1 rental.
And when we say projects, we're talking about just like an actual one home or a unit in a rental.
Right,
Okay.
Yeah,
Just for
that-
scale, okay.
yeah, that was his goal.
Or account.
Wanted to-
Right.
so the one that was in the article in the paper was a single family home. It's a very nice home and it was 1 home. They want to do 3 or 4 more of those, 3 more of those, and then at least 1 rental project. And they've identified the rental project and like I said, they've identified that it's gonna be a tri-party agreement between the landlord, the renter and the light department. And I think they've identified the location and the measures, but it's not done yet, so.
Be interesting to have a presentation from Ipswich when they're,
Yeah.
down the road with.
Yeah.
Here's what we found, here's the challenges, here's the unexpected things, here's the things that went well, here's.
Yeah.
Things that didn't go well.
And I think, yeah, and like you said, the funding sources and how do you keep that? So what he did say is the initial grant of 125 for the DOER is, they're already in the application for a larger grant from at the federal level. That's their goal.
We're at 5, about 25 for this project, so that.
Yeah, that's why I think they said 5 projects.
Yeah.
There's a similar pilot project in Worcester on triple decker that Mass CC is funding with a not-for-profit organization where they're trying to electrify triple decker. And the costs are astronomical from a customer perspective.
That may be where, if we get a grant, buying down an interest rate to 0 through a local bank might be easier from a administrative cost.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should, I
Oh,
think
yeah.
collect examples, learn more about MWEC.
Yeah.
Do we have any information about the timing of the MWEC
I think their hope is next year.
next year? Okay. Yeah, I think we collect information, good examples.
I mean, I think it's gonna be a lot of these little,
Yeah.
but I mean, a lot of this stuff is almost like some pilot type
Right.
projects too, so.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if they're hugely successful, then at the end of the day, you're gonna need a bigger boat to fit everybody in it, but in the short term. It's, trying to test these different concepts,
Yeah, and maybe, I mean, to your point, maybe there's a slice of it,
yeah.
like a certain niche
Yeah.
that. would
Well,
be
and
great.
that's the one thing I did think about on that was like they identified the 3 measures with different financing and payback. Like I said, he's doing the insulation over for $6,000 that's gonna be paid back over 8 years, and this is over 6 years, and this is over whatever it was. I don't remember the details, but so he said it was gonna be like $83 a month, and then it's gonna go down to 72, and then it goes down to 45, or whatever the numbers were. And it was laid out in a specific method with certain things ending at certain points in time.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe there's a certain application of certain fuel type or a certain housing,
Yeah.
Maybe you can like start very focused with something that's like a clear success and easier to.
Yep.
Wrap your head around.
Just say that, one of the things that given all the difficulties, one thing that stuck out as a benefit is that, the cost recovery period is, over a longer period of time compared to, I'm just using the heat loan, Mass Save heat loan as a reference point. It's 7 years. It's a fixed payment. It's, 0 interest, but it's you have to, it's more onerous for somebody who, doesn't make as much money or would have difficulty paying
Paying
it
that back,
in
yeah.
a shorter period of time. And then, so there might be a segment of our customer
Yeah,
population that,
it's gonna be really interesting to hear, like, the case studies on the 5 that they sign up in terms of how he did that tiered thing.
Yeah.
That's the part that,
each measure is going to
right, have a different payback and a different point in time.
lifetime and
You
different.
know, and so, and a lot of it relies on, all right, especially in a case where you're going for, if you're going from gas to all electric, that's one thing, because we can see your gas. But if you're going from oil, did you keep good track of your oil bills for the past 5 years to help drive that savings? Because that's what you're counting on. The savings is not coming from us. The savings is coming from the fact that you're not buying oil anymore. So do you have good records of what you spent for oil over the past 5 years that's gonna generate that savings, so. So that's gonna be part of it too. And how did they determine all that as they did the calcs for figuring it out,
Right. And then one thing I thought you were gonna say, Mark, is that changes to the billing system would be nightmare, but you didn't.
Yeah,
It's on
Well,
his dissertation.
Is that part of your white paper?
It is, but I think I collectively referred to it as an administrative burden. So that
Okay.
falls under that umbrella.
Yeah.
we get Tom's bill up to 6 pages.
Yeah. Well, it would be an individual billing change for each individual, because each individual home is going to be retrofitted differently, correct?
Right,
So,
yeah. The one thing I did get out of him was that I think it's a single line item, but in the agreement, it's got a life cycle. Like I said, I think he says it's like 80, it starts out at 8, yeah.
Yeah, 154.98 for months 1 through 38.
Yeah, right there. That's
160.
so it's a single line item on the bill. But in the agreement, it spells out like what the path of it is, yeah.
yeah, so that's really a manual process, and you've got to remember each one is going to change at month 39 or whatever it is. So 39 or 111, yeah.
I think the other thing to be concerned of would be if we go down the path of having a program like this and all of a sudden now the equipment that the customer installed starts failing. How would you push them still collecting the money where they have to pony up more dollars to?
Right, because they have to replace that heat pump. That's
So is the tariff on bill, is that something that's spelled out under, and this might be a question for Jack, under the DPU on, right, if you put a tariff on the bill, it's legally binding to that meter through the DPU. Is that how that mechanism works with the tariff on?
They would have to do a rate filing. I'm assuming that Ipswich is doing a rate filing to allow for that. Because right now, when we change our energy charge from 30 cents per bill to a KWH charge, we refiled that rate and we had to redefine the ECC to be what it is, which is a kilowatt hour charge that's set annually by the board. And like that had to be all spelled out in the new tariff that we So I'm assuming that if they're gonna have a line item on the bill, they will have they have to file a tariff for that explains the line item. And to the extent that, what it involves and what it includes, and you can write the language generically enough so that it gives the flexibility to do this, but you would need to change the tariff to at least say tariff on bill this is what it means. And within your tariff sheet, it has to have an explanation of that and spell out its bounds.
Would you like set the tariff at like 1 cent and then
No, I think
you'd have the rate for this one at 150 or 1? Yeah,
I think what you do in the tariff sheet is say tariff on bill is based on an agreement between blah, 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 and it's set on a customer basis, because you're never gonna get to the place where it's picking out a cent per X or, it's gonna be an agreed upon rate, So,
Would that be required even for pilot,
huh?
even for pilots?
I'm not sure what they did. I didn't ask, I forgot to ask them whether they had already filed a rate sheet on that. It might not have been required for the pilot, but I do know if you go forward, I think you'd have.
well, I was more around the protection for the utility, if you put a tariff on bill for, 173 months. And then ownership or rental changes, that there's protection from us, from the DPU saying, no, there's a tariff on bill on this meter, and that, it's set there for 173 months, it's 24 months have elapsed, you have X left.
That's the question. Do they have the authority to do that?
And that's.
Or is it backed up by a lien on the home that, that
This is more of a programmatic
Yeah.
kind of, I would say, it's like a programmatic incentive as opposed to a tariff, like a rate. I don't,
Right, yeah. the
like
tariff is
energy
just,
efficiency. You have programs,
Right.
but you don't have a tariff for each program. Do you know what I mean?
Right, yeah, that's right. I mean, certainly for the municipals, we can file our own. If it's rate related, then there's no oversight by the DPU. But I think that we would want to look at any similar tariffs that have been approved by the DPU for any of the investor-owned utilities to try to, mimic the same kind of the process that they would have, but I don't know that there are any right now. I can check with the DPU and find out, but none of this existed when I was with the DPU.
Okay, yeah, I was just thinking, protection for us, right? We put a program like this in place,
Yeah.
and the legalese of, right, the occupancy changes over. How do we ensure that tariff, is tied to the meter? And that was one of the things that John, when he did the presentation, that intrigued me is it's tied to the meter. Didn't matter who occupies it. So the sale of the home, the changing of a renter, that tariff stayed with that meter, with that property, because the improvements were made to the property. And that's the recouping of the cost was on the meter. And so making sure that stays locked in on the meter, I think, is a very important piece.
Yeah.
Regardless of.
It seems to me like it would be something that would be problematic for the DPU from their perspective.
right, and the other thing is, again, what happens if they only pay a partial? So the way he explained it right now in his thinking was that if you had $142 electric bill and you paid $100 and 42 was the tariff on bill charge, when you pay your next bill, the first application is gonna be to the $42 before we're applying it to next month's energy. So that's how they're planning to enforce it, is like, it's still 100, your bill's still 142. If you say, I'm only paying the 100 for electric, I'm not paying the tariff on bill. When you pay next month's electric, the first $42 is going towards your last month's bill. And that's how their view of how this is gonna work, is that's the way they're gonna do it. So they would still ultimately be liable for payment, not shut off for non-payment. But again, they're trying to, obviously they don't want to do that, but in the same token, that's one of the iterations. How do you deal with that?
So,
I'll talk to someone at the DPU.
Yeah,
and see if they have-
these are all interesting, challenges
Yeah.
and considerations. If we were to ever go down a path like this to kind of flush out and iron.
so Elton, maybe. I recall at National Grid, there was conversation about on-bill financing for solar. I don't know where that went. I wasn't really working on that, but I don't know if you recall.
Ask the rate people to see where.
Yeah.
it stood, but I
But-
haven't been involved with it.
But more recently, I'll just say that, I'm not pushing for this in any way, but Duke Energy is rolling out an tariff on bill financing program for energy efficiency. So maybe, it's not like Ipswich is the only
No,
We'll look at it.
case study.
just the electrification, some of the electrification stuff adds another we're not talking about a traditional EE program.
Yeah.
Anymore, so that's the complicating piece.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right, on-bill financing has been going on for a very long time, and many jurisdictions have done it. Many utilities have done it, but I think what the difference is, like, now we're adding in a lot more cost.
Yeah, and then there's
Just
the
not energy
monitoring and
savings,
auditing and,
Additional energy cost, right? And then, yeah, so there's like a couple components that now make it just different than what it used to be, you know? And more risk, I think, right? More
yeah,
risk
and so,
for not recouping your costs for, yeah,
right,
having equipment breakdown or
right.
dysfunction, yeah.
But it would be just as a, you know, point of reference to know like who's going forward with this and how have they kind of resolved some of those issues if there's a clear path, you know, that they've found, because some people are very excited about this and just want to make sure that we have all the information. And maybe, you know, the end goal is just like a heat loan kind of program.
Right, I think.
Because
the other-
it's the end,
Customer sent a couple of leaks when we looked at, the other one was more of the loan program.
and if we have a revolving loan program, then we can keep reinvesting.
Yeah, and I think what Mark and Joe were saying is that if we join, we have a simple one that we buy down a little of the cost with a local bank, but if there's a larger one that gets some grant money and makes it a little bit, and we can participate in
Yes.
that, then that's even better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think the question that I raised a while ago, the pool loan, because I think it was 7 years, like it was designed originally for at the time, not energy efficiency and not renewables, right? It was designed for power plant investments.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, utility
Or
infrastructure investment.
utility infrastructure.
Yeah, so we could buy a truck with it, you
Right.
can build a substation, that type of stuff. Yeah.
So what they were saying at the time is that it wasn't well designed to kind of. move
The
it.
original establishment, so the charter of the pool loan program with the DPU would have to be modified, so I think that's what Joe's. And the question becomes is, and I think what Ron and Zoe are working on is actually not necessarily modifying that program, but creating a different one.
Okay.
So, because we have, the MWEC can go through and just file it, leave the pool loan for infrastructure in place. 'Cause that's helped us out a couple of times. You know, we've taken small, short-term loans to do stuff and paid it back in a year or 2 years, you know. We bought 2 trucks at the same time once, that's $500,000, and so we took a short-term pool loan for that, paid it off in a year and a half or whatever, and so that's what that was designed for, but I think they're gonna look at setting up a different one for something like this.
Yeah, and so too, I think your point, Sharon, if they set up a new one, I hope that the term could be longer than I think it was like 7 years or something like that, that it could be longer. So that it's a little easier on the customer, especially when the expenditures get high. So hopefully they're looking into that. kind of stuff.
Okay. That exhausts the agenda. Are there any other matters that anyone would like to bring up?
Okay. I mean, just a reminder, maybe worth tomorrow morning talking to everybody. There's been an incident in Waltham this afternoon where a police officer was killed and 3 National Grid employees were severe, or at least one is in critical condition, but 3 were hurt. As a member of a public drove into the work site.
So it was a gas site, because obviously it was National Grid.
Gas, yeah, in Waltham, it was a gas site, so.
Oh, my God.
Reminder to
Yeah.
everybody.
We'll do a
set the work-
safety stand out in the morning.
Set the workplace.
Yeah, the work, we
Properly.
try to do that every 2 years, we do a work site setup, and I will say that's one of the places I get frustrated with the most, because they do get lazy with that, and that's for their own, and, you know, Julia, Jack and Julia, I mean, we lost a person 18, 19 years ago due to,
Yeah, it was, yeah,
Yeah, this
it was in 05.
yeah.
That's
the
some,
second time in 2 years. Like, we had one incident on Route 20, I believe, a year or so ago now.
Yeah, it's dangerous out there.
And that's one that we can control more than we do, so.
Absolutely.
God.
okay. Nothing else?
What was the 20, I didn't see, what was the 2080 order you were gonna
So it's probably gonna come more when we get into the strategic planning discussion next month. But with the order being out today, I still haven't gotten my hands on a summary of what the requirements are. The generic theme that I heard today was around the DPU not being supportive of continuing with the gas system. They're not supportive of the renewable gas or hydrogen, so they're gonna be looking for ways to reduce the gas consumption and usage as much as possible. Shift as many customers over to electric. So I'm assuming that the pool of investments on the gas side of the business would have to be reduced somehow, and how does that play in the electric space when it comes to reinforcing and having the available capacity on the electric system?
One of the things that it does talk about specifically is around expansions of gas systems, and any kind of investment in that has to be counteracted with a complete study. If you want to include it in your rate base, then you have to show that all other alternatives were considered in terms of non-fossil fuel emitting. So, and where we've been in a mode for a while that we haven't been expanding the gas system at all. So that, and the fact that we've had the multi-family moratorium and now the specialized energy code, a lot of that will help us in some ways. We're not actually under all of the requirements of that, but we're actually acting as if we are. We've been acting longer that we are under requirement. Some of the other stuff that was in it is around safety and,
Leak prone pipe.
leak prone pipe.
Yeah, did they say anything about GSEP?
That's still going on.
Yeah,
I know.
I'm on that committee and that's still,
Placement of our leak prone pipe.
yeah. So that, what they're saying in that committee right now is they're gonna recommend changes which are very similar in terms of including. However, the group is moving at least to the understanding that the gas system is not going away. And so GSEP has a different goal than expansion of gas.
Yes.
GSEP was to replace
Replace leak-
existing pipe.
Yeah.
And so,
Maintenance of the existing system.
right,
Yeah.
and which is, unless you could say for sure that
I was asking.
the system is going away in the next 5 to 10 years, which it's not, you need to make sure you're still dealing with that from a safety and operational perspective, because that part is,
Correct.
in the meantime, in a separate bucket, you make investments that instead of expanding gas systems, you
Right.
do geothermal or electric or other things in that.
So 2080 doesn't reference anything about GSEP.
No, GSEP is gonna, our committee is gonna make recommendations to the changes in the GSEP law coming up. Right now, the recommendation, it's supposed to stay in place till 2036, I think it is. They're gonna recommend shortening GSEP, but it's still out to 2030, because again, it has a different goal.
Yes.
And I think educating all the
Just-
parties.
I was just concerned that, the replacement of leak prone pipe was kind of like swept under
There's been a lot of education going on.
umbrella of
We actually hosted one of the meetings here and we actually,
expansion.
the guys were working right there and we talked about that section of pipe, the fact that it had 3 leaks on it and we replaced, once it gets to a certain point, one of the factions of the group was saying, why don't we just keep repairing pipe? Well, because once you have 1 leak, you're gonna have 3 and then you're gonna have 5, because that means the pipe is failing. So that's why you go in and you replace the whole section. Because they had the stat that said, well, a repair is much cheaper than a replacement. It is, yeah, except when you add all the repairs together,
Right.
then it gets to the point where you're better off economically replacing the whole section
Okay.
now rather than replacing 10 leaks. And by the way,
I agree with you, Pete.
and by the way, the safety, so we're educating that group.
I know, I'm just saying that
Yeah.
there are people out there that believe that the GSEP program should just be dismantled and go away, and that doesn't solve.
I think that what's been proposed by the AG in our meetings is that it just gets shortened. So
Okay.
it brings it a little, it's actually, I think their proposal is 2030.
And I think that's part of the 2080 order too, where they're looking into targeted electrification of certain.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily wider towns or anything like that, but. The point is, do the analysis whether converting everybody to electric is gonna be cheaper than investing in your gas infrastructure. I think the component that is not taken into consideration is what we just talked about, where the customers have to retrofit their homes and it's coming in at $40,000 per average household or house premises. So
Right.
when you think of that, how does that play in the grand scheme of things of which one is going to be more beneficial?
And in the conversations, we include all the costs or we just include the utility costs? Because right now the infrastructure cost would be, do I dig the street and put the pipe in, or do I upgrade the electric wires up above? And comparing those two, but you have to add in Mrs. Smith's 40 grand for the work she has to do in her house to make that happen. That's the part that you need to make sure you're including that in the whole equation, so.
And I think the order is also getting into areas where, I mean, it's not gonna apply to us here in Wakefield because we're both the electric and the gas providers, but majority of the communities have one utility as the electric, the other as the gas provider. So how do you get into the data sharing of the customer's information? What do you do to protect your franchise rights? Because now the other utility is encroaching upon your franchise rights when it comes to like elimination of the gas system and expansion of the electric. And there's a lot of thinking about business models going forward.
Yeah, there's a lot to it.
When you get through the 2080 order, will somebody provide like 5 bullet points of like what's most important to know about it?
We can share that.
That would be awesome.
And some of it's operational too. It's like our regulators say, some of it came out of Merrimack Valley, you know, and so we've already been doing like we've talked about a few times, we've already replaced all our regulators. So we made that investment. Now the problem for National Grid and Eversource is that, you know, we had 5 and we replaced 1 a year over, you know, 4, and we replaced 1 a year over 4 years. They have 1,000, you know, so, and they're not gonna replace them all in the next 2 years. So what happens, you know, so.
Yeah, and I guess to be clear, I'm more interested in the Wakefield perspective.
Yeah. Well, that's probably more discussion.
More
on
relevant
the
for,
strategic gas
yeah,
plan,
exactly.
so. Get time more National Grid or whoever is supplying the gas in.
Yeah,
Gonna
yeah.
cap the pipe.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second. Oh, motion, sorry.
Take a
I'll
motion.
make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Very well, all in favor?
I.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thanks.